Yes, contrary to what we think, this process had been going on for a long time. Actually, even prior to the war, there was a back channel, and I think all three of the diplomatic troika of Pakistan were part of it, but primarily it was the army chief who was involved in shuttle diplomacy with Witkoff and Kushner uh, in Oman, in other places, and also talking with the Iranians. There are many of his visits which we don't know about, but it all seemed to be going up in smoke, as you just said. Uh, 2 days ago and everything. And I think then again, Pakistan. I think somebody in Pakistan used drafting skills to create a message hmm, that would also relate to Iran's demand that there should be long-term peace. And I think I have a feeling that Trump's tweet of last night was mutually agreed upon in advance, so that the process could go forward. Otherwise, Iran would not have accepted anything else if it would not have contained specificities of trying to find a long term solution to the Middle East process. I think it was very difficult. It still is very difficult. It's a very tightrope dance. So, China, you did not have to do anything with China. You had to just take them on board about what we're doing. They wanted peace uh, uh, in this conflict. The U.S. you had a personalized relationship between I think between all of Pakistan's three diplomats, the three top diplomats, and the U.S. side. With Iran, it was a bit complex. We had excellent relations with Shahid Larijani and the Shahid Supreme Leader. So then we had to forge ties in the IGRC, which were present already, but the personalized touch one had to create again, and then to satisfy genuine Iranian concerns. So that's how we were able to do it. As far as the GCC is concerned, again a very tightrope dance, but Saudi Arabia displayed pretty decent strategic clarity because they could have attacked many times in between because of provocations, but they did not. And I think Pakistan Saudi Arabia defense agreement went a lot way in a long way in reassuring them. No, it's been pretty hybrid now since the past 4 or 5 years. But what happened is that after the May conflict with India, the army chief got a certain personality, and then his ties with Washington and the ties with Iran. So I think that the personal touch is there, and it goes a lot to show us about his role here. But the downside about this is that maybe in the long run, this is not an institutional arrangement. But at this moment, it has helped us a lot. I think it would not have been possible without his role in his shuttle diplomacy, especially between Iran and the US. No, I don't think so. I think the 5 point plan has nothing to do with what happened. The plan was in very good faith, but the plan was too generalized. These are specific. So you had to find a middle ground between Iran's so-called 10 points and the American 15 points. Whereas that plan was welcome, but more than the plan, it was China and Pakistan being on the same side that was important. Yes, it would be possible, but it would be a very complex and a very difficult negotiation. It won't be easy, and its chances of failure are as much as the chances of success are. So it's a 50-50, as you pointed out. The positions are wide apart. The biggest problem will be on whether you are going to create the Straits of Hormuz as a totally independent lane again, or something to that effect, and also giving a permanent guarantee to the Iranian side, how will you do that? Because I know for a fact that if the Americans wanted to tell anything to the Israelis would say yes. There's no doubt about that. But if you play good cop, bad cop, as they have been doing, then anything can be derailed. Well, I don't know whether it could become a model for middle power diplomacy or not, because this was very specific. But it does raise Pakistan's diplomatic standing and Pakistan's national standing. And this is evident from the very quiet you observe on the eastern border, eastern neighbors side. And I think Jaishankar is going to the UAE now to create more trouble for us. But it's indeed a glorious moment in Pakistan's history, in its diplomatic history, in its national security policy history. I hope that it remains and that we can conclude these discussions, which, as you said, were very difficult discussions, are going to be very difficult discussions. We need to conclude them, and it's going to take a lot of give and take. And I'm afraid Pakistan's drafting skills are again going to come into play. I think Israel can derail any ceasefire, but this time the stakes are very high for President Donald Trump. So you during these talks, I think Iran or even Pakistan would have to tell the US side that any disruption by Israel is going to be considered somehow as disruption by the US. So this sentences like this, that I won't name the Iranian interlocutor, he would be assassinated. These are all just diplomatic statements. If you want to restrain Israel, the US can easily restrain Israel. Pakistan's own security, I think the biggest fear is that if you have a regime that is anti-Pakistan in Iran, which replaces the current regime somehow, then Pakistan would have a hot water situation all around, except the Chinese. So that is a problem. The other is that the moment these talks fail, Pakistan will also get a lot of brickbats, because the world is looking at Pakistan's credibility, and it's better that these talks succeed. And then attacks would start again. The only result would be that the US would start attacking Iran again. Iran is still in a position to respond with force, and the whole Middle East would be back to a violent ridden Middle East again. What I'm hinting at is that the Trump's tweet of last night was not drafted by any American, and certainly not President Donald Trump. If you look at the vocabulary of the tweet, this is typical South Asian Pakistani language. So, I mean, even you could tell in your sleep that this is not an American text. His tweets of today are American. The back to the gang ho, short sentences. Let me tell you the words that Americans never use in their language. One is wherein. They would never use wherein. This is typical Pakistani Indian stuff, uh, from our old school things. Then consummation of a peace agreement. Never. You will never find an American text which has this word. Then the last three, four lines, taking into consideration the long-term impact of Iran. I mean, this is typical Pakistan grade 18, or grade 18 draft. I know some people will get offended in Pakistan at my saying so, but even if you look at it in your sleep, you can tell. I think, unfortunately, what will happen is that Iran will have to give up on its nuclear program, and they seem ready to do so. The uranium stockpile will have to go either to the US or some other site. The Straits of Hormuz, I think the world will insist on total freedom of movement. Iran will insist on some procedural checks by the Iranian military and the navy, and I think this will be troublesome. Thankfully, what has happened is that both sides do not have Iran's missile program, uh, as the center of the talks, which is very, very surprising for me. It could also be omission. And but I think the U.S. and Israeli side will insist on some caps on the missile program, and these caps are unachievable. So this was supposed to be something that could not be bridged, but surprisingly, the 10 points of Iran don't mention it. There was a famous article by Jawad Zarif Saab in Foreign Affairs. They do not mention missiles. So somehow, surprisingly, Iran's missile program is off the table, which is unfathomable. Maybe it's an omission, and but if it remains off the table, I think it would help secure peace. Yes, this is a signal. This is a direct signal to China and Russia, or maybe any other country. There may be a signal to Pakistan also. So, so yes, this is a signal. This will come out in the detailed discussions. Um, China or Russia would not be deterred. Quite frankly, they haven't done anything substantial for peace in the Middle East, except China standing by Iran and providing satellite help. Beyond that, they have been pretty quiet, leaving Iran to its own fate. I know this is not a popular opinion, but that's true. I think these attacks will stop till day after tomorrow. Once the talks start, they will stop. Usually, what happens is when such announcements are made, some targets are left and you attack. And I think Iran did not unilaterally attack. I think Iran was attacked, maybe by proxies, maybe by Mossad, God knows who. And that led to Iran attacking Kuwait and the UAE. So, so Iran, this is what the Iranian side thinks. But these will probably stop. Not now. They would not be giving Pakistan such a high pedestal during these talks. But post ceasefire, yes, you're right. Post ceasefire, there would be countries that would be gravitating towards Pakistan for some sort of security. They would be diluting their total reliance on the Americans in the long run or in the middle run, but not during the talks. Maybe Pakistan would get a role here and there, Turkey would get a role here and there, but nobody is going to elevate Pakistan to that level. But it's going to be automatically elevated because of it being central to these talks. So we could have that. The other problem which I must identify is that whenever you go for comprehensive peace or guarantees that Israel won't be attacked by Iran, which is going to come come out reciprocally in this. Um, then the issue of Gaza, the plight of Gaza civilians, the West Bank, and the two-state solution is also going to come to the fore. That's why these talks offer a huge opportunity. You could have comprehensive peace if you had a larger heart, and these could just fall apart in 6 months, even after a comprehensive agreement is reached. So it's very important to address Palestinian statehood now at this stage. It's actually these are sentences of a testosterone-filled cabinet. They want to show that they're great and all that. They don't mean anything. President Trump also says that U.S. forces can decimate Iran in one night, and they're standing by. This is just a sort of a threat that if you don't behave or anything of that sort, we are standing by means nothing. I think, in my estimation, Pakistan, by holding these talks at a publicly identifiable place, which is rumored in Islamabad to be the Serena complex, I think Pakistan is making a slight mistake. Pakistan should Pakistan should hold these talks at a place that is not commonly identifiable, that is secret, number one. Number two, beyond these 2 weeks, Pakistan needs to somehow ensure and put its weight, whatever it is, in creating an agreement that is enforceable, that doesn't just go up in smoke. But then a lot of imponderables will come. A lot of you'll have to have, other than the top interlocutors, you will have to have techie guys, diplomatic techie guys from the US side and from the Iran side, who will have to look at the smaller details. If for every smaller detail you have to send an email to Washington or to Tehran, then they will take inordinately too long and something can go wrong. It's important to have comprehensive delegations, by which I mean the proficient officers who know what is happening. This relates to maritime affairs. This relates to checking. This relates to IAEA matters. This relates to disarmament. This relates to transfer of radioactive material. You'll need to have larger delegations who know what they're doing. You can't leave it to the U.S. cabinet, although Vice President Vance is probably more qualified for this than anybody else. But you can't leave it to their cabinet. Although the Iranian side, I think, is pretty proficient. And similarly, we will have to have Pakistan's disarmament people, Pakistan's Foreign Office senior officers. They would be needed, like I said, partly laughingly and partly seriously, how to write things down. I think the relationship with the United States will remain intact. People who are having doomsday scenarios that they will ditch the US or the US will ditch them are wrong. Now, it would be great if Iran could have better relations with the Gulf states. I think Iran needs to do it, and they also need to do it. I think one of the biggest problems which was used by Israel is their friction, and they had a long time to solve it.